In 1845, Mary Elnor is hung from a tree after being accused of witchcraft. The locals nail a mask to her face before lighting her on fire, then a priest recites an incantation while holding up a doll. A few hours later, her burnt body is still hanging on the tree. In present day in Massachusetts, disgraced journalist Jerry visits a farmer who claims his cow has been marked by a cult. However, when Jerry takes a closer look, he discovers the Metallica logo, so he guesses the farmer's son did it. Suddenly he hears a weird whispering noise that makes him approach a nearby tree, where he finds something sparkling under the sunlight. Jerry reaches into the tree and finds the burnt doll from the beginning with a tag that says February 31, 1845. The farmer says it's common for field workers to leave dolls in the ground for good luck, but usually they don't look like this one. Seeing this as an opportunity for a creepy story, Jerry steps on the doll's head to break it and takes pictures of the farmer supposedly finding it. Later that night, Jerry is driving out of town while drinking. When he turns to grab the bottle, he almost hits Alice, but he dodges her just in time. Jerry's car crashes, but he's fine, so he comes out and notices something moving in the shadows. It's Alice, who Jerry follows through the woods until they find the tree from earlier. Falling to her knees in front of the trees, Alice repeats, "I pledge my soul to you," until Jerry touches her shoulder, then she faints. Afterward, Jerry takes her back to town and learns she lives with Father Hagen, her uncle and only living relative. Hagen calls Dr. Natalie, who checks on Alice to confirm she wasn't hurt and reveals she's deaf-mute. Jerry wonders why he heard her talk, and Natalie blames it on his drinking. While his car gets fixed, Jerry must stay in a motel in town. He goes to church and hears Hagen preaching, only to notice Alice staring at a statue of Mary. She keeps hearing a female voice calling her name and suddenly stands up to walk out of the building as in a trance, and soon other young girls follow her in a perfect line. Everyone else also follows, and Jerry has his camera ready to record while Alice stares at the tree, where she sees an apparition of Mary. After standing there for a few seconds, she shocks everyone by talking, saying she has heard the voice of Mary herself, who is requesting through Alice that everyone return to the tree the next day. Afterward, Natalie runs tests on Alice, who is excited to learn she can now hear as well. That night, Jerry has a nightmare about a red sky taking over the town, the doll breaking, and a ghostly woman crawling out from the now red creek. He wakes up when a drop of water falls on his face and he looks up to see the ceiling is covered in mold. The following day, all the locals return to the tree and once again Jerry records everything. Hagen tries to keep Alice home, but she comes out anyway and goes to touch the tree, where she sees the apparition of Mary again. Then she approaches a paraplegic boy and tells him to have faith in Mary because she commands him to walk. To everyone's shock, the boy suddenly stands up and is able to use his legs. Jerry makes sure to record this too as everyone falls to their knees to pray. Inside the church, the statue of the Virgin begins crying blood. Soon the miracle appears on the news and goes viral. Bishop Giles and Monsignor Delgarde are sent by the Vatican to investigate if Alice really performed a miracle or if it's another scam. They hold a press conference, during which they give examples of the only 3 real miracles by Mary from modern times, which have inspired 3 shrines that attract millions of visitors every year. There are 3 steps to confirm if a miracle is real: the illness must be incurable, the cure must be instantaneous, and the cure must be complete. Then Alice arrives at the conference too and is overwhelmed by the amount of reporters asking rude or stupid questions. Jerry cuts in with a gentler approach and questions that allow her to express her faith, so she only answers him. While the priests work on checking if the conditions are met, a shelter has been put over the tree to protect it from the elements in case it has to become a shrine later. When Hagen takes a closer look, he discovers the doll buried in the ground, causing a terrifying ghost to appear near him. The creature is about to attack him, but suddenly more people show up and the ghost disappears. Then Hagen goes back inside and interrupts Jerry's interview with Alice. He suddenly starts coughing very badly because of his lung disease, but he ignores it and lights a cigarette anyway while scolding Jerry for using Alice for fame. A wary Hagen thinks that this will bring the wrong kind of attention to Alice and points out that next to every shrine, the devil builds a chapel. People who have seen Mary in the past were treated like freaks, sent to convents, or dead in a few months, and he doesn't want that for Alice. That night, Jerry returns to the motel and keeps hearing creepy whispers behind him. He doesn't see anything in the corridor, but when he turns around, a hooded presence appears behind him. The next day, Alice practices singing with Hagen while Jerry and Delgarde watch. Suddenly Hagen starts coughing violently and he collapses. While Jerry calls for an ambulance, Alice asks Hagen to pledge his soul to Mary, then she places her hand on his chest to make him stop coughing, and Hagen is delighted to discover he can breathe normally again. However, he's also shocked to see a dark presence behind Alice reaching for him. Afterward they go to the hospital and Natalie shows them 2 x-rays, one from a few days ago, and one she took just now. It's clear that his illness disappeared out of the blue. She also confirms that they ran studies on the former paraplegic boy and all his issues magically went away as well. Delgarde and Giles have no choice but to declare this a true miracle, and soon the tree is transformed into a shrine. Alice goes viral again and the town starts to gain lots of tourism from all over the country. People call Alice their hero and become her fans. She gets her own Wikipedia page, and someone even says she'll be bigger than Taylor Swift. Some people are still skeptical and call it all a trick, and one guy decides to leave the town with his family because when God appears on earth is usually a sign of tragedy. When so many reporters surround Alice's home that it becomes impossible to live, Hagen decides to send her to a diocese in Boston for her own safety. Sometime later, Hagen is smoking a cigarette in the church and notices the smoke moving at a weird angle. He follows it to find a hole in the wall with a notebook, which contains the steps of a ritual to seal the devil with a mask and a doll. In the shadows, something watches him. Meanwhile, Jerry has dinner with Natalie and tells her about the doll he saw, so she explains that those particular dolls are known for trapping evil things, putting the impossible date of February 31st to keep them inside forever. Afterward they go for a walk and Jerry is surprised to see the creek from his dream. Natalie shares that the church used to own most of the town and Jerry shocks her by guessing that was back in 1845. Then Jerry checks the water and sees the ghost from his dream jumping out at him. When he turns around, he almost sees Natalie as the ghost too. Suspicious, Jerry decides they need to talk to Hagen. Speaking of Hagen, he hears the sound of chains in the church and notices someone entering the confessional. He goes inside too and starts the confession, hearing a woman's voice mention the usual stuff. However, she also mentions destroying many lives and her voice gets creepy as she announces she came for him. A hand suddenly hits the middle wall as the woman says Satan gave her power and she was the one to heal Hagen, but she's offended by his doubts. The lights start flickering and the woman keeps on detailing how she killed all the people who tried to stop her. Terrified, Hagen comes out of the confessional and hears the organ playing on its own before he sees a dark hooded ghost in the middle of the church with a rope around her shoulders. Hagen tries to run away, but the ghost blocks his path to attack him. By the time Jerry arrives, he hears a noise in the confessional and opens it to find nothing. At that moment a body appears behind him on a rope and Jerry is shocked to see Hagen dead. After the paramedics take Hagen away, Giles asks Jerry to keep the fact Hagen self-deleted a secret since it would affect people's trust in the local church. However, Jerry isn't convinced that Hagen self-deleted. The next day he visits Alice and points out Hagen thought the evil always followed, but Alice says Mary would never let that happen. In the evening, he returns to the motel and he notices all the lights flickering as he hears the whispers again. This time he does see the ghost at the end of the corridor, but it disappears in seconds. Afterward he reviews all his interview footage and notices something weirdly blurry next to Alice. He starts slowing down the recording and is shocked to see the ghost moving on the paused video before disappearing, but when Jerry leans in, the ghost jumps out at him only to disappear again. The next day during Hagen's funeral, Jerry chats with Natalie, who can't believe Hagen would self-delete either. Together they go into the church's basement and find the notebook Hagen hid, through which they learn about Mary Eleanor. She could heal the sick and claimed that Virgin Mary talked through her, but anyone who doubted her would end up dead. In 1845, the town finally fought back and they submerged Mary in the creek until she confessed she was serving Satan. Then they nailed a mask of the Virgin to her face and burned her to death to trap her ashes and soul in the doll that Jerry broke. After Mary's death, every person she healed became sick again. Jerry concludes that Mary Eleanor is the one speaking to Alice and not the Virgin. He also realizes that the ghost killed Hagen for finding out the truth in the notebook. At the same time, Alice interrupts the mass for her uncle saying that Mary wants them to gather at the shrine tonight for a special service. Back to Jerry, he notices a sheet moving, but when he removes it he just sees an old Jesus statue. Suddenly another sheet falls and the ghost reveals itself as it tries to attack the duo. The light bulb is broken during the attack and the duo runs away, getting out just in time. They want to warn Alice, but Delgarde is taking her away to avoid an annoying crowd. Jerry and Natalie drive to Boston, where Natalie goes to look for Alice in the convent while Jerry confronts Giles and Delgarde with the truth in the notebook. Giles already knew about it but Delgarde was never informed, yet Giles ignores his complaints and announces they'll still do the service because a diary from centuries ago isn't evidence. The nuns don't allow Natalie to see Alice but Jerry uses the chance to visit the diocese's archives and learns that before Mary died, she had a child. She also made a deal with the devil to live on through her descendants, meaning Alice carries her blood. Suddenly he loses signal on his phone and the files with Mary's confession melt down before a statue of the Virgin starts breaking down, revealing the ghost. Jerry throws a table to block her way, but the ghost just pushes it away before teleporting in front of Jerry. At that moment Delgarde shows up and starts exorcising her, so the ghost makes the writing on his Bible wash down. However, Delgarde knows the words and keeps going with a crucifix until she disappears. Then Delgarde agrees to team up with Jerry to stop the service before Alice takes everyone's souls. In the evening, a bunch of merchandising stands have been put up next to the shrine to make money out of Alice's miracles. A huge amount of people gather at the shrine and even more fans watch the service online. In the church, Jerry and Natalie watch Delgarde start a ritual with a doll, intending to trap the ghost again. However, whenever he tries to light a match, the ghost puts it out. Suddenly a flame grows incredibly tall and spreads to the cross on the wall, causing it to fall and kill Delgarde, whose body also catches on fire as the statues around them cry blood. In the shrine, Alice's eyes start to change as she gets ready to claim everyone's souls. At that moment Jerry and Natalie come inside, and in a desperate attempt to stop Alice, Jerry says he faked all the miracles. Natalie starts talking to Alice using sign language, explaining that Mary is a demon and not a saint. As Jerry makes up a story on how he faked the miracles, he also mentions that Hagen self-deleted and that Giles asked him to hide it. Natalie tells Alice that Mary killed Hagen and she starts having doubts as the crowd begins protesting against Jerry's words. At that moment, Mary tells Alice to finish the service or she'll never speak again. Finally realizing she's being manipulated, Alice tells everyone that Mary isn't real. The crowd begins insulting her until suddenly the tree and its decorations catch on fire. Everyone starts panicking and running away, but the healed boy can't walk anymore and Natalie has to rescue him. As the flames spread, the ghost comes out of the tree and makes the fire worse. Then she removes her mask to show her burned face before touching Giles to instantly burn him down. Jerry and Alice try to run away but the ghost keeps blocking their path, then she burns Jerry's hand before pushing him to burn his leg next. When she's about to finish him, Alice cuts in and receives the ghost's attack instead, dying when the creepy hand injures her chest. Since Alice was the last descendant, the spirit can no longer live on and she screams as she fades into oblivion. A crying Jerry holds Alice's body and prays to God for mercy, causing Alice to be revived. Sometime later, Jerry, Natalie, and Alice visit Hagen's grave. Alice can't talk anymore, so Jerry is learning sign language to communicate with her. Inside the church, a statue of Virgin Mary is crying blood again. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.